Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hari Hari Bol, Hare Krishna. Thank you for that. Okay, so let me just do this officially now. Okay. On this 16th day of August, 16th day of April, getting ahead of myself, 2023, we're speaking at the Krishna Fest in San Diego, California. And the topic today is the holy name of Krishna, as glorified by Lord Chaitanya in the first verse of the Siksastakam. So before I begin, Om Jnanatamrandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Mena Tasmai Śrī Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, Siksastakam. Siksastakam means 8 verses of instruction, and I think I could say, without too much argument, that this Siksastakam forms the foundation of this Hare Krishna movement. The philosophy of chanting, the practice and the goal of chanting is explained there by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. And he didn't write very much. He debated in his pastimes with great learned scholars, Mayavadis, impersonalists, and he was known as Nimai Pandit in his early days. Super smart. He had his own school, and he defeated one of the main pundits of the day. But mostly, when he took sannyas and he was preaching, he preached by chanting for the masses, chanting and feasting. Well, not too much philosophy. But he also instructed his prime disciples, Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami, who then instructed Jiva Goswami, their cousin, in the deep philosophy of Krishna consciousness, which has come down to us in Prabhupada's books. The Srimad Bhagavatam, which is known as the crown jewel of all the Vedic writings, was translated by Srila Prabhupada. He endeavored very hard to do the whole thing. We got into the 10th canto, about chapter 13, But he was following the commentaries of the followers of Lord Chaitanya. So he's giving us the same knowledge that was Lord Chaitanya taught to Rupa Goswami. And of course, in his books like Nectar of Devotion, which is Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Lord Rupa Goswami's definitive work on the practice and the goal of the whole practice of Bhakti Yoga. That was one of Prabhupada's main books. So there's a tremendous amount of philosophical underpinning in this practice of devotional service. But the actual essence of it is described in this Siksastakam and kind of summarized in this first verse. So those who know it can chant along. Cheto darpana marjanam pavamahadha vagni nirvapanam Shreya kaidava chandrikavatanam vidyavadhu jivanam Anandam buddhivardhanam pratipadam purnamita swadanam sarvatmasnaparam param vijayate Śrī Kṛṣṇa sankirtanam. Now I put that into a poem, and then we're going to explain. There's seven metaphors here describing the effects of chanting and the benefits of chanting Hare Krishna, especially in congregation. All glories to the chanting of Śrī Kṛṣṇa's holy names, which easily extinguishes samsāra's blazing flames by polishing the lust-encrusted mirror of the heart. That chanting is the waxing moon that knows the secret art of causing the white lotus of good fortune to unfurl its petals far and wide throughout this bleak and blighted world. Of transcendental knowledge, which will take us to life's goal, the chanting of the name of Krishna is the life and soul. The ocean of ecstatic bliss floods far beyond its bounds wherever Krishna's merciful and mystic name resounds. Indeed, whenever Krishna's names are sung in congregation, at every step one tastes a joy that knows no limitation. So hear with great attention as I earnestly request, please chant Śrī Kṛṣṇa's holy names and be supremely blessed. The soothing nectar of the name will bathe your consciousness, bestow pure love for Krishna, and eradicate distress. So I'm going to go through each one of those points and explain. There actually is there's an order to them. So there's much more to the Siksastakam, but we'll just deal with this first verse, which is definitive. So the first statement is Cheto Darpana Marjanam. Marjana means to cleanse, actually to wipe clean. And Cheto means the consciousness or the heart, and Darpana is a mirror. So he's talking about the congregational chanting, just what we did together. There's also, of course, japa chanting, chanting individually, as many of you know. We chant on beads. I have my beads here. And Lord Chaitanya, he showed both. He chanted japa and he also did congregational chanting, and his followers also do that. In this movement, which Srila Prabhupada is following directly in the line of Lord Chaitanya and his followers, Srila Prabhupada, he introduced both of these. First, the congregational chanting. And then, when someone is interested in progressing further, especially initiation, then there's a certain amount of rounds you chant on these 108 beads, like warrior beads. So we're not going to get into that too much now, but the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra pervades all the practices of this movement. So the first statement that Lord Chaitanya says, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, this is the effect of Śrī Kṛṣṇa Sankirtanam. Chanting the holy name, especially together, becomes even more potent. So the mind or the heart is like a mirror, and it's covered by hundreds and thousands of births of our forgetting Krishna and all kinds of desires and anxieties and thoughts and things that have nothing to do with Krishna. This is called Maya, are on the heart. It's like dust. We can't really see ourselves as we really are. We have a false conception of ourselves. This is the first lesson in Krishna consciousness. You're not that body, Prabhu or Mataji, you know. You're not the body. You're the soul within the body. This is Krishna's first lesson in Bhagavad Gita. And the soul is transmigrating even in this life. We can all remember. Can everyone remember when they were 10 years old? I know that Mukunda can't remember that because he's not even 10 yet, right? He's out playing something. There he is, right behind you. Oh, that's someone else. But the point is, we've all been transmigrating from body to body. We don't call it that, but we're moving through various stages in this one lifetime, and the body is constantly changing. So is the mind. The mind is said to be the subtle body. We have two bodies. We have this, what we call the body, gross body, senses and everything else that we see in the mirror. But more important even is the subtle body, mind, intelligence, and ego. We call it the false ego now because it's a false sense of self identified with this body. Where I'm born, what my gender is, what my color is, my language is, my family, all of that. But that is incidental. After we leave this body, we'll have a whole other family, and we'll have a whole other identity. And it's been happening thousands and thousands and millions of times. We can't remember them, but we're affected by what we contacted in those previous bodies, especially the human body. So this is the basic dilemma, the basic problem of the conditioned souls of this world. But people don't recognize that. People don't understand. This is part of what we call Maya or illusion. So this congregational chanting of the holy name polishes that mirror of the mind or the heart so that we can begin to see who we really are as spiritual beings, as pure consciousness, and as servants of Krishna, of the Supreme Consciousness. That relationship becomes more and more obvious. And even in the early stages, the mind, the subtle body, becomes relieved of a lot of anxiety and worry and becomes naturally more joyful. I've experienced it myself over the years. Because we're getting rid of so much unwanted dirt. You know, that what are the dirt formed? A lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy, grudges that we hold from year to year, lifetime to lifetime. All of that impinges on our real consciousness and brings us down into what is called in the Bhagavad Gita the modes of nature. The modes of nature. Modes of ignorance, where we become envious of others and we want to end it all. All right, let me just take this drug and sleep for 12 hours. This is the mode of ignorance. Read the Bhagavad Gita. Everyone should have a Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. We're just on, or also you can come to our class. We have classes Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night at 7:15, Bhagavad Gita class. If you can't come to the temple, you can catch it online on YouTube. And they've been going on for 34 years. I've been doing it. We're going round and round through the Bhagavad Gita. We just finished chapter 14. We're beginning chapter 15, which is also, they're all wonderful. So, you're invited. And there's no fee. Hare Krishna. So, Cheto Darpana Marjana, by polishing the mirror of the mind and the mirror of the heart, one becomes naturally attracted to Krishna. This is the very name Krishna means all attractive. It's described about the duties of the Vaishyas, the farming is karshati. They're pulling the plow, right? That karshati is the same root as the word Krishna. He is attracting everyone in the universe. So we become attracted to Krishna and less interested in all of the varied distractions of this world. You see, we become more detached. Vairagya develop. So then the next stage is Bhava Mahadava Agni Nirvapanam. Now the metaphor is that this material world is like a big forest fire. Why? Because you're never really free of anxiety. Just like right now, if you want a little anxiety, just read the news. I mean, there's so many things to worry about, like climate change. I mean, these are huge things. Each of us has our own things, our own health, and children, and this, and then the rent. They keep raising the rent. The climate. They've changed the climate. I mean, there's a whole lot of things to be in anxiety about. So that's called it's compared to a raging forest fire. And the main things, forget about just the current events and the age we live in. Every living being must face old age, disease, and death. And human beings can understand the future. Animals don't know, so they don't. But they're always in anxiety because they have so many enemies that they don't know what's going on. This is a world of anxiety. We want to go to Vaikuntha, which means the world where there's no anxiety. That's exactly what that word means. How can there not be any anxiety? Because there's no old age, disease, and death. There's only Krishna or Vishnu. There's so many other worlds, the spiritual worlds. And everyone is completely secure in their sarup, their original form and their original mood and the original consciousness of service to the Lord. And we're completely secure. You're not evicted. Only if you rebel against the Lord again. But by that time we'll say, yeah, we made a big mistake. We're not going to do it again. So we want that world of Vaikuntha, but just the very beginnings of chanting extinguishes that fire of bhava. Bhava means becoming old and dying again, around and around. So this is a tremendous benefit, but this is just the beginning. This is the beginning of the benefits of chanting Hare Krishna. But it's such a simple process. It's available for everyone. Lord Chaitanya says in the next verse of the Siksastakam, which I won't get into detail, there's no hard and fast rules for chanting. Meaning there's no restriction of time, place, or candidate. If you want to go and chant the Vedic mantras and perform a sacrifice, you go to India, it says, are you born in a Brahmin family? Can you chant all the mantras with precise pronunciation? You know, do you know all the rituals? So no, you're disqualified. No one is disqualified from chanting this most important mantra. This is the Maha Mantra. This is the greatest mantra. And it's given out free. Lord Chaitanya gave it free, and all his followers do also. There's no fee for chanting Hare Krishna. So what a wonderful benefit. Just the first line, the fire of birth and death. If you keep chanting, you get liberated. That's the idea. Now, Shreya Kaidava Chandrikava Dadanam. Now, the Shreya means the ultimate good fortune. You know, ultimate good fortune. There are so many things that we value as fortunate or as good that are just materially good. You know, I wrote an article about this many years ago for Back to Godhead in 1982. It's been a long time. And we went through it and said, well, what do people regard as good fortune? I won the lottery, you know. I met my true love at the party. You know, I was so fortunate, you know. I was so fortunate. I was down here when they had the fires up north. Oh, I'm so fortunate to be in San Diego, right? There's all kinds of things like that. But then eventually, if that's your measure, you're going to become unfortunate because eventually disease will strike, this will, like, you know. So this is the real spiritual good fortune is compared here to a blossoming lotus, you know, that's just blossoming all over the world. Shreya Kaidava Chandrikavadanam. It's like the moonshine that is, because it's a night blooming lotus, this Kairava, that causes the lotus of good fortune to blossom individually and collectively, you know, for the whole world. So, Shreya Kaidava Chandrikavadanam. And one of the reasons why is because of the first two metaphors, because it liberates one from birth and death and extinguishes the fire of material life. And then a very interesting phrase, Vidya Vadhu Jivanam. Now, Vadhu is commonly thought to be a wife, you know. So this is the life of the wife of knowledge. What does that mean? Sometimes it's understood to mean referring to Saraswati. Saraswati is a goddess of learning. But basically it just means that if you chant this mantra, okay, just give me a second here. There it is. If you chant Hare Krishna regularly and according to instructions from the Acharya, in other words, seriously, then your knowledge, spiritual knowledge, grows. Now, it grows in two ways. One is that you get certain intuitions from within your heart. Subhasoul is there. But the most important way is that it makes you very interested and fascinated to receive the knowledge from the Acharya, from the sadhus, and especially from the books of knowledge. Srila Prabhupada's books are an ocean of knowledge, Vedic knowledge, just about this, transcendental knowledge. And if we become fascinated or interested in reading them, this is to our eternal benefit. You read the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and it's so important, those purports. You know, I read a Bhagavad Gita when I was 20 years old. It was a little paperback book about this life. Because if you just take the verses, no Sanskrit, just the English translation, it's only 700 paragraphs long. 700 verses, right? So this doesn't have to be very long. But also, it doesn't really help you that much, because you need the explanation from the realized soul. And that's what Prabhupada has given us. These extensive purports, which means the meaning or the commentary, which embody the ideas in the commentary from previous acharyas, especially Baladev Vidyabhushan, who's a great learned scholar in our line. So this is the idea that this chanting will make you very fascinated and interested in receiving the knowledge, and reading Prabhupada's books, getting the Srimad Bhagavatam, you know. So that's the life and soul of transcendental knowledge. And then he talks about Anandam Buddhivardhanam, how it expands unlimitedly the ocean of bliss. I mean, I didn't even know the word bliss before I came in touch with this movement. I knew about happiness and unhappiness, you know, and depression and all these different things. But bliss was like, sounds good, but I don't know, you know, I never experienced it. So ananda is different than sukha, if anyone knows Sanskrit. Sukha means, when you get sukha, it's going to be dukkha also. You know, sukha and dukkha, right? The dukkha means misery and sukha means happiness. This is the world of duality that we live in. But ananda is the real happiness of the soul. And the distinction is that if you can cultivate it properly, it doesn't end. These are two of my favorite verses. Let's go to this one. One of my favorite verses in the Bhagavad Gita describes this. He says, "Yehi saṁsāra bhoga dukkha yonaya evate ādyantapantang kotaya nate shuramate Buddha." Krishna is saying there, and we may have already experienced this in our life. We do experience it, but we may not make the connection. But the very pleasures that we experience from sense gratification, beautiful things to see, beautiful things to hear that we're attracted to, touch, taste, all of the senses have their objects. Those pleasures are the source of our misery. Well, that's pretty depressing. Then how am I going to enjoy? If I try to enjoy and then I'm just, you know, ensuring my suffering, maybe I can just be neutral and not do anything? No, you can't do that. we're by nature pleasure-seeking souls. So this verse says, yeah, that's the, and therefore the wise don't take their pleasure there. They have a beginning and an end. Everyone knows that. You may get something, just like eating. You may have, you know, have a wonderful feast. Maybe it's prasadam, you know. But maybe let's assume that, you know. Wonderfully prepared, the pakoras are there, the chutney's just right, the sabji's done to perfection, everything's nice. But there's a limit, right? You can eat so much, and someone says, just have one more pakora. No, I can't even think about it, right? It's just, there's a limit. Every pleasure is like that. There's a limit, and then if you overdo it, then the suffering comes even heavier, right? We know that. I grew up in the 60s, you know, and drugs were all around me. I was very fortunate I didn't get involved with heavy drugs, so I still have a brain. It could have been a bit better, but that's what I got, you know. But I was lucky, or fortunate to have good association. But so many of my contemporaries, so many extreme experiences, LSD and this and that, and then it got into cocaine and this, and then comes, you know, the same person, 40 years, they're 40 years old now, or 35 years old, and they're just a shadow of who they were. Their mind, you know, because it affects the brain. That's why what the drug does. Whether it's cigarettes, alcohol, or everything. The whole idea is it's a quick transformation of the brain, and it gives you a high of some kind, you know. But then it goes away, and there's results from that, and it's terrible. You're ensuring a lot of misery. That's obvious, you know. But it's true of every pleasure. If nothing else, if you just lead a life of, you know, reasonable sense pleasures, and you just lead, but that's going to bring you back again to another material body, because unfulfilled desires, so many things. You see, so that in itself, old age, disease, and birth, neither of them is fun. So that's what Krishna says, Yehi saṁsāra bhoga dukkha yona ādyantapantang nate churamate Buddha. So where the Buddhas means intelligent persons, where do they take their pleasure? Because we're pleasure-seeking souls, you know. That's in the previous verse. Bhayasparsheshu asaktatmat vindadyatmani yat sukham sabbrahma yoga yuktatma sukham akshayam ashnute. That last line is revolutionary. It means they experience what this is, Bhayasparshe, they don't take part in these external sense, you know, pleasures. Vindadyatmani yat sukham, they're enjoying the pleasure within. We all have, every one of us, we're a soul. And you know who's right there next to us? The super soul. Krishna's there. It's an expansion of Krishna. So when we learn the art of how to access that ocean of pleasure that's already there, then these external pleasures become insignificant. It's easy to renounce them. Oh, I can't even think of that. I used to do that, and you know, no more. This is the benefit, and it comes from chanting Hare Krishna. And the wonderful thing about it, and this is a transcendental fact that is just inconceivable. The name Krishna, is non-different from Krishna himself. When you chant that transcendental name, that sound, you're associating directly with Krishna. Now, of course, the purer you chant, the better, the more that you feel that association. But that's also in this Siksastakam. Nam namakadi bahudani de sarva shaktis. That nivid sarva shaktis tatrapita means that he's invested his potencies in the name out of his mercy, giving us in this Kali Yuga an easy way to perceive and associate with God himself. And that association is so potent that we begin to become attracted. He's all attractive. And that attraction is our greatest blessing. The more that you're attracted to Krishna. He's all attractive. And he is, according to the Vedanta Sutra, Anandamaya Vyasa. Krishna is always blissful. Even when he's killing the demons, Look, Nrsimhadev looked like he's angry there. And he is angry, because of what happened to Prahlad. But he's getting pleasure out of it, And Krishna kills so many demons. So he's always blissful and unlimited bliss. And we can take part in that. We can start to experience that. I've been doing this for 50 years. You think I would have gotten, if it was a fake and I wasn't enjoying anything, 50 years? Of course. There's such a wealth. I mean, the Hare Krishna mantra is itself sufficient for going back to God. Everything is there. But there's from the Hare Krishna mantra, from the experience that great acharyas like Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Srila Prabhupada, they did so many writings, and there's so many beautiful expressions of Krishna's beauty, Krishna's pastimes, more about the holy name. There's whole descriptions. There's one I'll give you an example. And he wrote, Rupa Goswami also wrote a Namashtaka. This is a Siksastakam, 8 verses about the holy name. Then that last one, it goes like this: Narada vino jivana sadormaniya yasa maruri pura from Krishna nama kamam spadameva saneva sena sada. So he says that this Hare Krishna mantra, the holy name, is the inspiration for Narada's Veena. Narada is a transcendental spaceman who goes everywhere around the universe preaching bhakti, just according to time and place and circumstance. So he's able to make so many bhakti. Vyasadeva was one of his disciples. So was Dhruva, so was Prahlad, and on and on. And so Narada Veena, so this is the inspiration. He plays the Veena as he travels and sings, And it's the inspiration for him playing that Veena is this Hare Krishna mantra, the holy name. Sudormi niryasa maruri pura. It is a flood of the sweetest nectar, this holy name. And so he's praying, may this holy name always appear on my tongue with great relish. He's praying that I have a great taste for chanting. When you develop a great taste for chanting, just imagine that if you had some food stuff, because we have a feast, it's a very nice feast, and say that, I don't know if we make glubjamans anymore so often, but those who have experienced glubjamans, this is one of the reasons I stayed in the temple. I didn't go home. I'm not alone, believe me. And just a burst of the sweetest, taste of the Prabhupada. Prabhupada used to keep a jar of those, actually a whole pot, there. And if the devotees were having a little trouble, he said, "You take a sweet ball." So many devotees stayed as devotees because of the sweet ball. So, but there's a limit. I mean, we used to have at brahmacharis, we had contests who could eat the most glubjamans. I'm not going to get into that. That's another thing. But the thing is, there's a limit. You can take so many sweet balls and then there's a limit. But suppose you had a way of just keep tasting that sweetness and there's no limit. That's the chanting of the holy name. That's why you find Haridas Thakur, who's Namacharya. He is the contemporary of Lord Chaitanya. Actually, he's a little older, but he lived during that time. And he's the acharya, or he's the exemplar for chanting Hare Krishna. And he would chant, we chant our 16 rounds, sometimes we get distracted, sometimes we have trouble finishing, 16 rounds, takes about 2 hours. He would chant 192 rounds every day. And he would want to chant more. Because it's just like that glubjaman is flowing, why should I stop, It's so sweet, the chanting, because you're directly experiencing Krishna, there's no static. When you start chanting, there's so many, the mind is wandering, bring it back, mind is wandering, bring it back, But eventually it becomes, it flows beautifully. So, Vidyavadujam Anandam Buddhivardhanam. So this is the expanding of the ocean of bliss, by this especially congregational chanting, And then he says, Pratipadam Purnamitasvadanam. At every step, one can taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. purna, complete amrita, nectar, tasting complete nectar by this chanting. So it's inconceivable, because if we measure everything according to what we've experienced, and we've had material experiences, you know. But the fact is that spiritual happiness, because it's based on the soul and the relation of the soul to the Supreme Soul, Krishna, really has no limit. It has no material limit. And then of course the logical, well, why did we ever leave the spiritual world for this? And that's a good question. But the answer is, it was a stupid move. So we should go back. There's a verse about that. It says, this from Srimad Bhagavatam. Because material life is based on ultimately fear. Eventually we all encounter that, you know. So it's bhayam dvitiya benaveshitaksad ishadapetasya viparyo asmati. So this describes how we came here. We made a big mistake by turning away from Krishna. We didn't want to serve Krishna anymore. We wanted to try to be independent. Now we can't stay in the spiritual world with that attitude, because it's a big disturbance to the other devotees. So we have a special place. Krishna created this place for us. It's called the material world, the world of duality. And so when we become absorbed in this the world of dualities, pleasure and pain, happiness and distress, all these different things, that's the beginning of our material life. And we forget the spiritual world. And everything becomes reversed. Instead of being Krishna's servant, taking pleasure in his pleasure, we try to be independent and joyous. And then, asmati, and we forget everything. So this happens by what Krishna's energy called Maya, illusionary energy. Tanmayato, so one has to be Buddha. One has to be intelligent about this. Taking knowledge from the Shastra, from the words of knowledge from the Vedas. And he said, Buddha abhajaitam, the intelligent person then begins worshipping that same Lord. And how are we going to do it? Under the instruction of exemplars like Srila Prabhupada, Acharyas, and the books. We have all facility for doing that. So begin worshipping again. Step by step, chant a few rounds a day, you know, but associate with devotees, come to the functions, read the books, and gradually become convinced to, you know, incorporate more and more of the principles of Krishna consciousness into your life. You can be in a household, you know, with what pictures you have on the wall, what sounds you have playing, you know, you have a little altar, books you read, you can make your home a temple. So then we can begin to experience this, enjoying the nectar at every step. So then it is sarvatma stabadam. This chanting can bathe every soul. In other words, take a bath. Sarvatma snabadam padam vijayate Śrī Kṛṣṇa sankirtanam. And may this chanting of the holy name be victorious in this world. And it is the hope of the world. Otherwise, just look around you. Everybody is so confused. You know, these inventions that are made, they always have a two-edged sword. Just like the internet, the cell phone. Well, you know, I mean, your child, your 11-year-old can access anything on that cell phone. Huh. You know, I remember when I was growing up, it was Playboy magazine. And I said, you can't read Playboy magazine. And they wouldn't sell it to me as a 12-year-old, you know. They knew that's not, you know. So that's very reasonable. We're going to protect you kids from these things. But now, if you have the cell phone, it's all there. Two-edged sword, right? So this is the nature of the material world. And so the knowledge that we're trained with, that we can have, this is everything to form our view of the world, view of ourselves, what is important to do, what is important to avoid. All of that moral structure comes from association, from knowledge, and from careful tending to the consciousness of who are growing up. So now we're adults, practically everyone here, but still we can transform our consciousness by cultivating this knowledge of Krishna consciousness and acting on it. When Krishna, don't forget Krishna is always with us in our heart, when he understands you're making an effort to hear about him, it's right in the Bhagavatam, then he begins to cleanse the heart more so that you'll be more interested, you see. And if we continue this hearing and chanting and cultivation, then we become very light. in both ways. We have light in our hearts, and our burden of karma is reduced. And I'll tell you an experience. This may, I hope I'm not out of bounds here. This was before I even joined the movement. I was chanting a lot. And I was chanting, and I'm walking out of onto a parking lot, out of a store, and suddenly I felt myself become lighter. It's almost like a whole burden, a lot of karma was I just felt, oh, okay, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Because really it is a burden you carry, the years and years of karma, that is determining. But that can be changed. You can change your destiny. And the only way to do it is by taking shelter of the holy name. So that's my little harangue for you tonight. And by the way, this is I have the whole Siksastakam on poetry, which I'm willing to share for a small fee. Just your email. Just send me your email, and I'll send it to you. There's no fee. The fee is just your faith. Yeah, just your. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I can't imagine selling this stuff. But it's I recorded this many years ago in Mayapur once, and it's still on YouTube, and it's going viral. It's been 18 years, and it's already got 20,000 hits. Then I look at some of the others, 4 million for that kirtan? Whoa, what's going on? But anyway, it was quite an experience right there. At the foot of the Panchatattva deities, and there was Radhanath Swami behind me, and Indra over here, and there was Satyanandan Swami, and Vyasaki was my side man, and our own Vrindavan Das, who we see, he was like there as a teenager, he's watching. And there's a Swami now named Śrī Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Swami, who was known as Ekalavya at that time. He was a professional jazz trumpeter who traveled all over the world before he joined as a young man, expert trumpeter. And you'd always hear him on the kirtan, on the Parikram kirtans. He was out there and he'd blowing the trumpet just in tune, everything, So he's there watching. At the end, he blows a little, So these literatures that have been left here, they're very, very potent. If you read the Siksastakam, read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the last chapter is all about the Siksastakam. That's the current. And Lord Chaitanya gives his own commentary on each verse, so don't miss it out. Everyone should have a set of Chaitanya Charitamritas at home, and you can worship them, and you'll have Lord Chaitanya living at home in your house. So, any questions, comments?
Guru Krishna.
Guru Krishna, Prabhu.
Okay. They make this point, Lord Chaitanya makes this point that there's no hard and fast rules.
Yes.
There's no hard, but then, with japa, we can't use the index finger, we can't chant with our left hand.
Yeah. So there's a contradiction.
What does he really mean then, because there's actually so many rules, actually, So.
Well, what he's saying here, Nānamakāri bahudāni jasā tatrāpitāni yamatak smaranena kala. So the thing is, that's not a hard and fast rule. It's not that if you're chanting with your forefinger and you insist, said, do not chant. Whatever you do not chant. If you chant with your forefinger, you get the reverse. No. If that's your thing, go ahead. But we'll explain why it's not such a good idea, and eventually you give it up. The point is that this chanting does not wait for any pious activity, cleansing process. Just like Brahminical activity, if you want to be a Brahmin, right? There's so many things you have to do before you sit down and actually do a sacrifice. Not everyone can do a Brahminical sacrifice, but this is a sacrifice, Sankirtan Yajna. And any living entity, especially a human being, can take part from day one. Now, as you progress, you say, okay, well, this is, just like the number of rounds. If you get to really be serious, then you want to get initiation. There's a certain vow, take a number of rounds, and then there's a whole thing. Offenses to be avoided. Like one of them is inattention, which is the root of all the others, and that can be a lifetime effort to try to bring it back. So there's no hard and fast rules. Just like Srila Prabhupada, when he came to America, you know, he started in Manhattan, and really, they were where he was staying. First, he stayed in Pennsylvania. That was just kind of about to get him settled. Then he came back to New York. He had no place of his own, but there was a friendly yogi he had been established uptown, Manhattan, and he could stay there. But when he tried to preach to his followers, he said, no, Swami, because he was, you know, taking him the Bhakti path, and he was taking him a different path. So Prabhupada was restricted. But when he had his own place, you know, which is first on the Bowery, which was a difficult part of the cities. Now we have homeless, they're scattered everywhere. We even have a few here downtown. I know it's a lot more. But then, if you were homeless, if you had lost your job, you had nowhere, then you would go to New York in the Bowery. It wasn't that every city had its own homeless. We had them all in New York, and they were all in that one spot. So Prabhupada had to you know, climb over a couple of. I mean, they would pass, you know, drunks. They were in the way of his door. So that's where he set up first. So what did he do? Chant Hare Krishna. Anyone who walked through the door, you could chant. No, he didn't ask, did you do this? You can join the kirtan. No. Just sit down. And don't disturb, just chant. So the point is that there's no hard and fast rules for chanting, but there are rules, that says in the offenses, if you want to progress rapidly in the chanting. The point is that, you know, anyone can take part. And for a tremendous benefit. It says, if you chant one name, you get rid of more karma, more sinful reactions than you can commit in this lifetime. And then it says in the 6th canto, if you hear one name, of course it has to be chanted by devotees, you know, then that also eradicates your sin. So just see how potent this chanting is. It's especially made for this age. This famous verse we used to chant on the kirtan, right? Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam, kalau nastyeva, nastyeva, nastyeva gatir anyata. If you want to achieve the supreme goal of life in this age, when dissension and chaos abound, there is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way that can ever be found. But to chant Krishna's name, but to chant Krishna's name, but to chant Krishna's name with a stout-hearted vow. And to pray, O Lord Krishna, O friend of the poor, let my head ever unto your lotus feet bow. That kind of goes into the 3rd verse of the Siksastakam. Anyway, there's a lot that could be said. Okay, we have someone in front here. Gaur Keshava Prabhu. Where's Mukunda? Maybe he's chanting extra rounds. Huh? All the class, okay.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for that nice answer, Dravida Prabhu. I just remembered Jayadvaita Maharaj says that these are not hard and fast, these are soft and slow rules. As compared to the cost of love of God in the previous ages, like Satya Yuga, you know, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga. I mean, you had to put a lot of effort. So as compared to those, these are not hard and fast, these are like soft and slow rules.
There's a special dispensation in this age. In the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a whole description of the difficulties of this age of Kali. Everything will be reduced. Our longevity will be reduced, mercy will be reduced, truthfulness will be reduced. Just look around you. Truthfulness, on and on like that. And then it says, so it's an ocean of faults, this age. Kali doshanadhe. It literally means Kali Yuga is an ocean of doshas, faults. Rajan, he's speaking to Maharaj Parikshit. This is the end of the Bhagavatam. Kali doshanadhe Rajan, asti eko mahan guna, kirtana deva krishnasya mukta sangha param vrajait. This is a wonderful verse. Probably recall. So he says, this Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, but there's one very special quality in this age. Kirtanareva Krishnasa, by engaging in the kirtan, sankirtan of Krishna's name, Mukta Sangha Paramvade. Now Mukta Sangha is a very important phrase. Sangha means two things. It means association, as in satsanga, right? Association with sadhus. But it also means attachments, right? You meditate on something that's attractive, you become attached to it. That's what advertising is all about. Try to give you a 2-second meditation that will plant a desire. So that sangha, we have millions of things that we're attached to. We forgot many of them previous lives, but they're affecting us now. But here it says mukta sangha. It says will liberate you from that attachment, as I was speaking before. Mukta sangha, and then param vrajet. You'll go back to the spiritual world. So this is another seminal verse undergirding the Sankirtan movement. Lord Chaitanya, he accepted the Bhagavatam as the proper commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. It's the crown jewel, the ripened fruit of all the Vedas. The Gamakalpatadogalditam palam shukamokadamita dravasamyitam pibata bhagavatam samalayam mohodahodasika bhuvipavuka. Third verse of the whole Bhagavatam, which indicates this is what it's about, the nectar. So this Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of the tree of the desire tree of all the Vedas. The Gamakalpatadogalditam palam, and it is very ripe. Just like, have you ever had a mango that's so ripe that you cut into it, you have to practically drink it because it's so liquidy, right? That's the Bhagavatam. The Galitam Palam, fruit. Pibata Bhagavatam, that's why he says drink the Bhagavatam. Rasam Alayam, drink the juice of the Bhagavatam. And then Rasam Alayam means Alayam. Layam. Layam means liberation. Up to the point of liberation and beyond. It's not, the purpose is not to get liberation. That's a side benefit of advancement in devotional service. So Muhuraho, again and again. That's why Prabhupada established the Bhagavatam class. You're all invited. 10 minutes to 8. If you can't make it personally, turn it on YouTube. Muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavaka. But you have to become a rasika if you're going to taste the rasa. So that means you learn become purified so that Krishna's name, form, qualities, pastime, service becomes nectar to you. So then you become rasika, muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavaka, oh great soul. So he's speaking to these souls in Naimisharanya. So that's the nature of bhakti. And it's wonderful. It doesn't depend on your age. Prabhupada was in bliss and he was so peaceful. And you'd see him chant. Sometimes we have videos of him dancing in UK after the installation of Radha Landanishwar. Very ecstatic. These films and Yadav and his wife took them over the years. So Prabhupada was, pushing 80, and he was going all over the world. He wasn't sitting still, and he had so much headaches and worry about the movement, but he never lost his traction, and everyone was blissful of seeing that. So those are still available. Those experiences are available to us. Anyone else?
I had one question.
One more question.
Yeah, so you mentioned about bliss. So what are some do's and don'ts in chanting or in our behavior that can, continue to give that bliss to us?
Yeah, well, there's 10 offenses. We should know them. They're mentioned in Prabhupada's books, in the Adi Leela and in the Nectar of Devotion. Of course, Harinam Chintamani is now available. And the most important one is that can really, put a big block in your devotional life is to offend devotees, is to become critical or in other ways to offend devotees. Especially the spiritual master, advanced devotees, because the thing is that in many ways it looks like counterintuitive. Here they're giving up all of the things that I find that are so important in my life and I'm take pleasure in, and they're talking about God and all the different. So you may find that that doesn't make sense to you, But that's why the openness, the receptivity to the message, beginning with reading a little bit and becoming curious about this experience and this philosophy is so important. So I'm not going to go through the 10 offenses now, but those are, the main one is inattention. That's the root of all of them. If you don't pay attention, you're not really getting the benefit, and eventually you'll stop. But if you do pay attention, if you do try to focus the mind on the holy name, whether it's kirtan or japa, you'll start to feel the potency more and more, and it'll become, second nature. It'll be much easier. So it's a process. The main thing is to try to associate with the devotees and try to read the books and try to incorporate some of the practices. The easiest of which is chanting Hare Krishna. On the way to work. You can listen to anything, but we push the right button so that you're listening. Our fate is formed by what buttons we push in this age, isn't it? So it's all available. All right, so now we're going to realize some of the things now with another kirtan. But I can't lead it, so I'll call on someone else. Thank you very much for your attention. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. And don't forget, Bhagavad Gita class, 7:15, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Anyway.